Hello, St. Anne Parish, and welcome to this week's Quick Things. It's a conversation on some breaking news of sorts here in Wausau. Joining me is Gwen Paul. She's the volunteer co-sponsor coordinator. That's a big title, Gwen, for the and probably a big job as well. New Beginnings for Refugees, which is a fairly new entity here in Wausau. So thank you for joining us, Gwen. Maybe first of all, tell us about the organization and your role with New Beginnings.
Sure. New Beginnings sort of started from a grassroots effort that sprung out of many other community members this spring. So it's been an ongoing conversation, and I'm helping to lead New Beginnings along with several other key founding members. So we all just have a heart to help refugees that are coming to our community.
Can you talk about how this all came together? So I'm trying to remember how I was brought into the conversation only through email with Pastor Rebecca Voss from First United Methodist. You're saying grassroots is really correct. Can you say a little more about how that grassroots effort formed?
Yes, so Pastor Rebecca, back in the spring, along with several other members, they were just studying more about hospitality and diversity, and had a small group sort of Bible study meeting together in the spring. And from those conversations, just sprung up more conversations about refugees and how they could help with refugees in Wausau.
Sure. And refugees are something that are kind of uppermost in our minds now because of the fall of Afghanistan to the Taliban. But the refugee situation in our world is pretty intense all the time. I mean, really, it has been for centuries, right?
Yes, that's been an ongoing need and issue, and a long-standing resettlement program has been going on for quite some time. So, it's nothing new under the sun.
Right. Well, we know that in Wausau with our experience of welcoming Hmong refugees, and often refugee crises follow wars, and we see that in Syria and with the Hmong following the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. In fact, the United Nations High Commission on Refugees was formed to deal with the aftermath of World War II, and then the Palestinian refugees with the establishment of the State of Israel. But so it's something we're hearing about now, but it's really going on in the world all the time, and it kind of happens out of our focus.
I would agree. Yeah, it's an ongoing issue, and we just might not be focused in on it. And
Right.
This most recent event has really helped turn people's eyes that direction. So, but yeah, even in our community, that this was something that was kind of being honed in on and focused in on even before this most recent crisis.
Right,
so.
Right. Can you, and when the conversation began, the Afghanistan situation wasn't part of it when that conversation began back in the spring. Who would have thought we'd be where we are at this point in terms of Afghanistan? So, I mean, there were other refugees that were in the kind of mix of discussion as the summer went on. Tell us about, let's go up to the present and where we are now. So I preached about, some of our folks will remember a homily I preached a few weeks ago. So Pastor Rebecca had emailed me like on Thursday and said, we need to know by 1 p.m. Friday how many families your parish will sponsor. And she had sent this to some other folks and organization leaders as well. And we had no conversation of any kind at all. I mean, this had been a very kind of low key, right? This was not a boiling situation. This was a low simmering kind of conversation. And here we are with 24 hours to make this decision. And I told the people in the homily, I said, well, I made a decision, but I don't need to tell you about it now, because by 9 a.m. Friday, she sent another email saying, let it go, nothing needs to be decided now. But here we are now. Some circumstances have changed, correct? Maybe can you update folks as to where we are at this point?
Yeah, a lot has happened. It's been interesting from the other side to see how it's all coming together. So yeah, that time that you're referring to, we all now call the fire drill. So we all were ready, which is good. It was a good sort of jolt to what's to come, and kind of helped us focus on, this is coming, and how are we going to be ready and be prepared and be welcoming. So I
So
think,
what is the current situation in terms of timeline or as much as we know, I guess?
yeah, as much as we know, so ECDC is the official resettlement agency.
And just explain what ECDC is, Gwen.
It's, oh, I should know the entire acronym. It's an Ethiopian council out of Virginia, near Washington, D.C. And that was started actually back in the 80s from some Ethiopian refugees. So, and just to clarify, they're not only resettling Ethiopians, they work with all different refugees. So that was just their founding members.
And this is an organization, one of, like, I can't remember if it's 9 or 14, something like that, that the State Department works with in settling refugees, correct?
Yes, they are one of 9 that are licensed with, the federal government. And they have 17 other offices now across the US. And WASA is one of 2 new sites that are being opened sort of simultaneously. So there's another office being opened in a smaller community in Vermont as well. So.
Okay. And so I interrupted you last week. There was word from ECDC.
Yeah.
That, go ahead.
Yeah, last week. So we were sort of waiting between the fire drill and last week to get some of the final approval from, some of the powers that be that determine when these things take place. So in October is the beginning of the federal fiscal year. So we knew that that might be a turning point for getting some of the approvals for the agency at some of the federal levels. So they did, they released a press release that kind of explains in detail some of those processes, but ultimately they were officially approved to come to WASA. And part of that approval, part of their application included 75 refugees in the first fiscal year. So that'll be October to October. And that was approved as well. So that was a big piece of information and a big step, knowing, what's coming for the future. So.
And in the statement, I think it said something about December, maybe the first group might arrive, or by December.
Yes, I think it said by December, and I think that will give them time to get their offices set up here and their executive director kind of caught up to speed on everything. So
how does that work then with New Beginnings, or how does that all play out?
Sure. With New Beginnings. So it's common when, if you have an agency in a town, that there's also sort of a volunteer coalition that comes alongside the agency. So in those situations, which most towns have something similar, in those situations, the volunteer organization has a partnership agreement with the agency so that we can, work well and in, good collaboration. So we're an asset, and not overlapping and different things. So that will develop in the next few months as we work alongside the newly hired executive director, who hasn't been hired yet or named. That's part of the process here. So we're hoping to have a little bit more clarity on, what some of those goals will be on the volunteer side.
Sure.
And then on the agency side, just to talk through some of those needs and yeah, find out how we can be of best service.
Hmm. What do you think? So what would be the next step in terms of how our parish or other organizations would be engaged in this? Do you have any idea of that yet?
Well, the first model is the co-sponsorship groups. And actually, ECDC has a link on their website regarding the co-sponsorship groups. And we have one as well on New Beginnings under our volunteer area, taking you to them. And that model is really just 7 adults that are willing to come alongside a refugee family and meet, different categories of needs for a longer time period, 9 to 12 months, to
Right.
really walk alongside of them. So, yeah, it's a
Which
great.
may seem like which may seem like a long time, but when you think of a family coming from a completely different place, Afghanistan, and it's not just that they're coming from Afghanistan, the circumstances of crises that bring them here. A year isn't really very long to really get settled in such a different foreign place, as I'm sure Wasa would be for any Afghanistan or anyone from Afghanistan or wherever. It's just hard to comprehend what that experience would be like for those folks.
Yeah, it's going to be a sharp learning curve for them because that is a short amount of time, and they will continue to have agency support and support through New Beginnings after that. But
Right.
I think it's really essential to have somebody closely paired with them to answer those questions and everything that will kind of come up as they're learning.
Well, and I have to think that after you've spent a year and you've hopefully had a good rapport relationship with these folks, you wouldn't just you wouldn't just suddenly be divorced from them, that you might continue to have some kind of connections with those folks. We had a meeting a few weeks ago in our parish, and some of our parishioners will know about this. There were about 24 people who gathered, and we reviewed that information from ECDC about the co-sponsorship program. And I'll put a link to that on our website. So we have a page on our website, stanswasa.org/welcome, I guess, where folks can find information about New Beginnings. They can find a pretty fine video from the UN High Commission on Refugees. It kind of sets the scene for the refugee situation. It's about a year old, I guess, but so the numbers are mind-boggling either way. 82 million refugees worldwide or something like that. So what we're talking about doing here is a drop in the bucket in terms of the worldwide problem, but of course it's phenomenal for the folks we're able to welcome and help. Maybe do you want to talk? There's an event this week, Gwen, and I guess rather than us talking too much more about it now, because so much is yet to be determined, but maybe to talk about the panel discussion on Thursday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's an upcoming panel discussion this Thursday via Zoom webinar, and we have that linked on our website. We will have a whole panel of community members in Wasa, kind of covering different areas, education, healthcare, all different voices, to kind of answer some questions and give more information about sort of what's to come. And then we'll also have a second panel that has many of our refugee experts on the panel. Some other organizations will be represented there, World Relief, also our state refugee representative, Boyana, will be part of our panel as well. So she'll have a wealth of information and, just some background to explain more about the refugee resettlement process and how things work. So
you'll have people like me, and then you'll have people who actually know what they're talking about.
You had a lot of good details. So I think that you.
So one of the things, and I guess one of the things that I'm sure the panels will talk about, but I think we can identify as a faith community why it's important for us to do this. And as someone said, the weekend I preached the first homily he said, a parishioner went out of mass and he said, I don't know what your decision was, but I don't know how we could do anything but sponsor and welcome refugees. But at the same time, there are people who I think it's fear, Gwen, that puts up some resistance to this. Can you just talk a little bit? I mean, I don't know if you're in a place to talk about this, but have you heard some of that? What are you hearing, and how do you respond to those worries that people have?
Yeah, I think fear is the root of, anger and many things that, might come to light as this comes to be. And really, we've seen so many people that are just supportive, and very few that, have some fears and concerns and even maybe some anger surrounding it. But ultimately, our response is, it's just, the refugees are coming here, and God asks us to help others. So how can we, turn away and not offer a helping hand as they come to our community? Ultimately, you have to be open and willing.
And
So
I think, as we'll hear on Thursday night, probably from some of these experts in terms of refugee resettlement, I mean, there's a whole review process. I don't want to use the word vetting, that sounds too inhuman, but there's a whole process that occurs in reviewing security and health for refugees before they settle in a community. So I'm sure we'll hear more about that on Thursday. And I think we just see from the Hmong experience how valuable it can be for a community. Obviously, there was resistance, and there continues to be. We see some of that. I don't know if it's so much directed against Hmong or just against people who are considered from outside or different, but we see how vital our Hmong community members are, to our parishes, our communities. So I hope, we've had a good experience. I hope that encourages us as we go into this new endeavor.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. So
Anything else? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
the panel will be on Thursday from 6 to 7:30. So.
And there is a link. So if you're watching this in the Quick Things email, there's a link in the email to register for the online panel. It's an online panel. So if you register, you'll get I'm sure, then you send a link to the people who register, correct?
Yep.
Is there a deadline, Gwen, on when they should register?
There's not a deadline, but we do have a cap as far as capacity for that, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the sooner you register, the better.
Yeah.
Okay. So hope folks will join. I think it'll be a very important source of information. So especially if we're uncertain, or we're encountering people who are kind of trying to figure this out, it would be good for us to be as well versed with accurate information as we can be. And any of us, just to know where we're at as we proceed with this. A wonderful opportunity, I think, for us as Christians in our community to respond to the gospel in this way. So, Gwen, we may hear from you again at some point. Thank you for joining us this week for our conversation. I want to conclude with a prayer. This week on Monday, we celebrated the feast of St. Francis of Assisi. And while St. Francis didn't directly address the question of refugees, I think what St. Francis modeled and did speak about addresses itself so directly, really, to our attentiveness to one another and our care. When we talk about caring for creation, well, fundamental to that is our care for one another. And so I want to offer this prayer from Father Austin Fleming out in Boston, and his prayer is inspired by the prayer of St. Francis. Dear God, it's the feast of St. Francis, and the words of his prayer are on my mind and in my heart. I come to you with Brother Francis and offer you my prayer, shaped by his. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. When politics tempt me to hate the other side, when my envy delights in workplace intrigue, when my thoughts walk the paths of anger's edge, teach me to love as you have loved me. Where there is injury, pardon. When words cut sharp as knives, when idle gossip tears apart, when careless deeds wound deeply, teach me to pardon and heal as you have healed and pardoned me. Where there is despair, hope. Teach me, Lord, to hope when I'm not sure of many things, to trust when I'm so ready to give up, to believe when I'm confused and lost in doubt, and share the faith and hope I have with those who struggle to believe. Where there's darkness, light. Teach me, Lord, to trust in your light through the dark of night, to walk by your light when shadows beckon, to stand firm in your light when clouds fill the skies, and to share your light with all who seek it. Where there is sadness, joy. Listen, my heart. Lighten my heart with the gifts of your spirit. Touch my heart with the peace of your presence. Lift from my heart the burdens I bear, and grant me the gift, the grace of your joy. O divine Master, help me find my peace in making peace, and know your love in loving those I know. May the needs of others shape and mold my heart. Teach me to love as I am loved, to forgive as I am pardoned, and to die to self that I might live and rise to share your peace. Saint Francis, pray for us. Gwen, thank you again for being with us. There is a link not only to the sign up for the panel discussion, but a link to the prayer that I just shared from Father Fleming. So you can find that in the email as well. See you Thursday, Gwen.
See you Thursday. Thank you.